Good evening, everybody. This is Cruz, the Beast from the East, and it is now 8:02 p.m. here in the Cap City. Hope that you've had a great Thursday. We are looking forward to chatting with you tonight. Also, looking forward to our special guest, Mr. Pete Snyder, who is best known as an entrepreneur. But tonight, we're going to mix that entrepreneurship up with some political conversation as well. And as you can see, the topic for the night was pricking the conscience of white America. First, I want to thank our sponsors for all that you do. I want to mention Ms. Pam Jones, Dr. Jonathan Shepard, Ms. Reva Travel, Brian McGaney, Gerald's Bail Bonding, and many others that support us day in and day out. I want to say thank you to us. Also to mention that we are scheduled to have State Senator Joe Morrissey to call in tonight. We're going to be, again, talking about a very, I wouldn't say difficult subject, but one that, again, we see a lot of polarization. And so my guest tonight, Mr. Pete Snyder, I will go ahead and tell you somewhat more about him that we're expecting for him to come on in just a few minutes. Not only is Pete Snyder known as an entrepreneur and marketing expert, he founded New Media Strategies as well as an investment company called Disruptor. Pete was born here in Virginia. Governor Bob McDonnell put Snyder in charge of a Virginia Republican Party election committee in 2012. Early in his career, he assisted Rudy Giuliani in 1997's campaign for the mayor of New York City. Pete also ran for the office of lieutenant governor in 2012. Pete was the chairman of the 2012 Virginia Victory campaign, and again ran for lieutenant governor, where unfortunately he was not nominated to win the Republican nomination. He has since declined to run for Republican nomination for governor, which was back in 2017. Instead, he worked with then political candidate Ed Gillespie. And one of the things that a lot of people don't know about Pete Snyder was that he is a Fox News contributor and commentator. Therefore, based on our topic of conversation tonight, he is a person that has political background. He's an entrepreneur. He knows a lot about the landscape of Richmond, a lot of landscape about Virginia as a whole. So we're going to go ahead and set some boundaries and everything, and hope that Pete will be joining us soon. Hopefully, also that we will be hearing from our state senator Joe Morrissey. He's going to be calling in, and we have some comments from him about all of the different things that have been going on, not only here in Virginia, but nationwide. And I want to read something editorial that I wrote yesterday, and it's been getting a lot of attention. It's been getting a lot of shares, and it has to do with Black lives. And I'm hoping that this conversation, again, where we will prick the conscience of white America, because I don't care what the subject matter is. There seems to be a lot of racial divides, and a lot of it is through misunderstanding. A lot of it is because that we're not communicating effectively with each other. A lot of it is based on tradition. A lot of it is based on the history, and not really understanding how we got here, and more importantly, how do we go from here? You know, Black Lives Matter predates George Floyd. and it predates a lot of the recent deaths like Breonna Taylor and Aubrey. All those things, again, you can go back to Ferguson with Mike Brown, and you would see Black Lives Matter. And for the last probably 90 days, just that word, Black Lives Matter, has really elevated into a national debate. It is so much to where the president of the United States has all but said that Black Lives Matter is pretty much disruptive, that they are quote unquote terrorists. So, what is it when it comes to white America that is causing so much aches and pain? And that was some of the things I want to talk about. Then also on the flip side of that, we see a lot of corporations that are run by white Americans that are now starting to embrace Black Lives Matter. They're starting to embrace even talking about the racial divide that is, again, the center of attention. And that's going to be really a hotbed when it comes to the presidential election in November, which is going to be vitally important. And want to say big kudos and to Kamala Harris, who, again, as you all know, is the Democratic choice of presidential candidate Joe Biden for that ticket. So even in that, already we see controversy in terms of whether she's black or white, or, just again, we're starting to see how the race for the president of the United States is going to go. We're seeing a lot of local races that are, again, taking on racial overtones. And so we're at a divided United States of America. And I would even take out the word United States right now. We are the divided states. We can be talking about popsicles, and I'm sure that it would be so divided, no matter what the conversation is, we have to start to, one, accept our history, two, change the narrative, and then dismiss a lot of the myths that are, again, out here, and that's being told by a number of not only media, but the GOP, the Democratic side. There's so much information out here that people are being bombarded, and you have to do your research. You have to start to drill down into what is actually going on. So here, let me read my comments here from Editorial yesterday. The first thing I said that I know that it would probably be some backlash to this, and when you step out and you make any particular statement out in public, you can expect to receive some ridicule. So here's what I said. The Black Lives Movement is being hijacked by others that apparently have other agendas. The violence and destruction of our city and many other cities around the country isn't being caused necessarily by blacks in totality or by people who live, work, and play in our city. There appears to be some attempt to polarize this city and this country by some that are trying to capitalize off the Black Lives Matter movement, and for police and justice reform. Don't be misled or confused. The narrative is being camouflaged. Yes, white lives matter, police lives matter, all lives matter. But until Black lives matter equally, they're just words. The words liberty and justice for all then become rhetoric until Black lives matter equally. Richmond residents and residents of the Commonwealth, let us write our own narratives whereby the Pledge of Allegiance actually means something. It is truly inclusive and not discriminatory. Let's be the example of racial harmony and also racial equality, and not the poster child for hate, polarization, and blatant injustices. The only thing for the triumph of evil, for evil to triumph, rather, is for good men or good people to do nothing, according to Edmund Burke. The question now becomes, and we have to all ask ourselves, are we a part of the solution or are we a part of the problem? And this was in reference to information that was on WRIC.com that four people had been charged in the city of Richmond after a violent night here this past week. And I brought this up because what was very glaring is that the four people that were charged were not African American. They were not necessarily people of color. And then subsequently today, we find out that another person was charged with vandalism and some other things based on riots back in July. And this was a white person. So Black Lives Matter, again, is taking a black eye because of the damage and destruction and the mayhem that is being caused by people other than and totality by Black people. So what is happening here is the fact that there is, again, that polarization that's going on. There is a strategic movement to divide and to keep America at odds with one another, especially within the Black community and the white community. And tonight's show, I was hoping to get, again, someone like Pete Snyder, who is very connected to the GOP party. That's also a businessman here in the Commonwealth, to talk about that perspective, to talk about why we're not seeing more evangelical preachers and congregations coming out in support of Black Lives Matter. Now, let's back up for just a moment. When we talk about even Black Lives Matter, we talk about the protests. Let's go back to Colin Kaepernick. There is so much misunderstanding in the white community about the kneeling. Everything that you will see when it comes to disagreement about what's going on in the NFL, what's going on in the NBA, and that the opposition to the kneeling, there is a general consensus, and this is my opinion, and just from what I read, there's a general consensus that the players and others, that they're kneeling in protest of the flag. And from everything that I know about, the protests and the kneeling and whatever, it is not the kneeling and protest of the flag, but it is again, a very, very public display of the displeasure of police brutality and the need for police reform. So what I'm saying is that the narrative, again, has been changed. The protest is not in protest necessarily of the national anthem, even though we can go into some of the verses and look at how that the national anthem, in which is sacred in every part of America, even in its original inception, did not have African Americans in mind when it was written. So if we wanted to even take that position in our argument, we can start right there. But let's go back to the why Colin Kaepernick is kneeling. Why are people protesting? Why are we having, all of the outbreaks, even in Chicago recently, when a young African American boy was shot in the back and in the head because by police. We see so much police brutality. And again, let me preface this and say that I am not opposed to police. I don't have a personal grudge or axe to grind, because we all know that there are some great police officers. But what we do not have is consistency when it comes to justice. And that is the problem has been the problem and continues to be the problem. And until we have some honest conversations, not only just in Black arena, but we have honest conversation in white America, we will not be able to move forward. Now, let me kind of take us back on a little history here. When we talk about protests, America was formed when it comes to protests. It was a very outward, very public protest. And stay with me for just a moment. I won't be all with you all along because I wanted this to be a conversation and not necessarily with me giving a lecture. The Boston Tea Party. When you think about the Boston Tea Party, what was it? It was a protest against the tyranny, or however you want to pronounce that, of the stranglehold that Great Britain, the United Kingdom, had on those who had come to America. And so in order to protest, guess what they did? They took the tea that was a commodity and they destroyed it in protest of the unfair taxes, the all the other things that they were subject to when they first got to America. So if anybody has learned a history lesson about protests, especially when it comes to Black Lives Matter, we can go back to the very beginning of our history here in the United States in terms of what protest is. So let's not get it twisted about that Black Lives Matter and the protest is some new thing, because it's not new. Again, this country was formed on the back of protests. Even when the Declaration and the Constitution, all these things were written as a form of government to say this is how we're going to rule. Now, again, we can go back and say that even when the Constitution was written, it was not written with Black folk in mind. So when we say Black Lives Matter, what is actually being said is plain and simple. Black lives do matter. They matter when it comes to medical procedures. When it comes to housing, when it comes to justice, when it comes across the board. That what Black people are saying in general is that we matter in this country, and that we're in 2020. And we should not be having to still deal with the police brutality that we saw back in the Rodney King age, that we saw back in the Selma marches, that we saw back in the Montgomery marches, that we saw back in the Bull Connor regime back in Georgia and Alabama and all that. We are supposed to have progressed and not regressed. And so what is the problem here is the fact that we're not having open conversation. And if we are having open conversation, it is generally one-sided. So again, my question goes back to white America. What are you thinking? What are you so afraid of? What is it that continues to divide us? Well, I'm going to say one thing is that we're having things that are the flame is being stoked from the White House. I said it, and I meant that. Is that we have a president right now that has, in some subliminal ways and some blatant ways, caused this divide and this gap and this racial tension that we're going through right now. Simply, in some cases, by not speaking out against police brutality, not calling for criminal justice reform, a sweeping criminal justice reform as we should. So, again, I apologize that Mr. Snyder is not here. I wanted to have a very open conversation so that we can hear from somebody, a part of the Republican Party that is a successful white American so that we can better understand and perhaps get to some type of resolve of how we go from the riots. How do we put the pieces back together? We know how we got here. The question is, how do we move from here? You know, I just even talking about the local dealing with the riots here. We have groups that have been calling for meetings with the local officials. And again, these meetings have been in very open public forums. And that, again, when you put in that type of ingredient, you have 200 to 300 people that are asking questions. You're asking for mayhem. You're not going to have anything that's going to be sustainable, anything that's going to be concrete, anything that you can use for constructive moving forward. So again, there's so much more I can say. If you have any questions before I go off, you have any comments, I would ask that you put your comments in the comment section here, and I'll be glad to address them to the best of my ability. I will say that I did reach out and contact, try to contact Mr. Snyder before we came on the air. I got his voicemail. Again, I have not heard back in terms of, I'm checking my emails now, and I'm checking my text to see if I have any information from Pete about what's going on. So I really apologize for the fact that whatever reason that Pete could not make it. Perhaps we'll reschedule this again. But again, we're at a crossroads in America. And as I wrap this up, we have to have some honest conversation other than in the Black community. We have to have some real honest conversation from our white counterparts. Because if you know anything about the history of all the civil rights movement, there were a lot of white clergy, a lot of white businesses that got on board when it came to the civil rights movement. And we have to go back to that formula now, and understanding that in order to move forward, we got to move forward together. You guys have a great evening. Again, we look forward to coming back with you on next Thursday. We're going to be talking about the eviction process and the eviction moratorium. We will have somebody here from the Legal Aid Council, Central Virginia Legal Aid Council. And also, we're expected to have Joe Morrissey. They are going to be in a special session with the General Assembly, but he is committed to coming on and giving us an update about what's going on in the General Assembly, and not only what's going on with that, but also talk about the eviction and what the eviction covers, what it does not cover. And we will have, again, a staff attorney here on next Thursday night. So you guys take care, have a safe evening. And again, thank you for joining me in Cruise Inc. Radio 102.8 TV.